and is currently the CEO of Save the Children, one of the largest international NGOs protecting children's rights in 120 countries. Not only has she impacted the lives of Danish people, but of young people around the world, especially refugee children. We're honoured to have you here today, Ms. Thorning-Schmidt. I'd like to welcome you and to give a 15-minute talk about yourself.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. Can I stand up?
Of course.
We'll do that at your first lesson. Well, I'm delighted to be here. As I was just introduced, I've been part of public life for many years. I started out as a member of the Parliament when I was a leader of my party for more than 10 years. I was Prime Minister, and now I live here in London. And I'm CEO of Save the Children International. And my task tonight was to try to give you some insights to what it takes to be a leader and how you could perhaps approach that. So first of all, I want to be saying to you that I come from a non-political background. I have no one in my family who was anything really. I came from the wrong side of Copenhagen, which is the south of Copenhagen. I come from a divorced background and just went to a normal comprehensive school down the corner. So that is my background, and I think that's important to know for all of us where we come from, because it also underlines that it actually is possible, even though you come without any connections, no family to push the way for you, but just a lot of will and hard work, you can actually achieve a lot. That is the case in Denmark, but I also think that is the case here. As I said, I've been asked to talk about my own background, but also what I would like to have known when I was your age. And that's a hard question, because you don't want to know anything. You want to believe that the world is open. You don't want to actually grasp the limitations of that world. You want to think that you have these amazing opportunities that you can start working for. And I think that's important, that that's maybe the first advice, that we shouldn't close down on ourselves. And one thing that I have never had, people often ask me that, is was there a plan? And I can very, very safely say to you, there was no plan whatsoever. The first time I got elected, which was to the European Parliament, I have studied European politics, and I'll come to that as well, that it actually takes a lot of hard work as well. But I've studied European politics. I've been working as an assistant in the European Parliament, and I've become member of the Social Democratic Party in Denmark, which is the equivalent of the Labour Party. And someone asked me, would you like to stand? And I don't really not want to stand. I had a small, very, very small baby at the time. She was 2 years old. I was expecting a baby at the time, so it wasn't really the best time to stand for Parliament. But then I thought, and that's maybe the first lesson was to keep options open. The second lesson was just say yes. Give it a go. Give it a go, even though you can't actually predict what will happen here and what's the next steps. Give it a go. When I said yes to standing for the European Parliament, I really didn't think I'd get elected, because I was number 6 on the list. My party only get 3 members, so I thought I'll just try to see what it's like to run a campaign, to get some people rallying behind your cause and who you are, and see what it's like. So I'll just give it a go. And I said to my husband, don't worry, I won't get elected. Don't worry about it. But democracy is democracy, so when the votes were counted, I had won my first seat with 36 votes. 36, not 3,600, not 36,000, 36 votes. And the lesson of that is, first of all, just say yes, just do it. You might not be able to tell all the consequences of a yes or a no. And the third lesson, of course, is that each person matters. Each person that you meet actually matters. When you do your campaigning, when you work anywhere, when you go to school, when you learn something, when you sit here and it's part of that, it's part of this class. Every person matters, and I think that's what I learned with those 36 votes. That maybe there was something in my campaign that went right, but it was good that those 36 people didn't choose to vote for a different person, because otherwise I wouldn't have gone to the European Parliament. So every person matters. And that leads me to my fourth lesson for all of you is be cool, be nice, be generous. I don't believe in the sharp elbows and people just looking ahead. I believe strongly in people, and I also believe in trying to be cool with who you work with. And that doesn't matter actually who it is. If it's your boss or someone who works for you or is there to help you with something, just try to be cool with them. And I think that actually comes back manyfold if you try to be generous and cool with people and just nice. Just try to be a nice person. Because that will actually take you very, very far to be a nice person. And it comes back so much. And that leads me to, I can't remember the fourth or fifth lesson, but it doesn't matter. Have fun. I've never been anywhere. I've been, taking a master's in Brussels, in Bruges in Belgium. I worked in the parliament, I became a member of the parliament, I worked for the trade unions, I became member of European Parliament, then leader of my party, and member of Parliament, of course. And it's good to work with other people and have fun. Open your eyes, see their qualities, even though they're not the same as you. It's so amazing to open your eyes and see the different qualities in people and embrace that. And really understand that rather than being the same and having the same capabilities, the same skills, it is actually much more fun and rewarding if people complement each other when you're working together. So I think that is very, very important to let yourself also be a social being, whatever you are doing. When you are going to this masterclass, when you go to your university, when you go into having a job, it's good to get friends and be cool and have a good time. I think that's very important. So that was all the fun things. Say yes to things. Be cool. Be nice. Have fun. Don't think you can predict everything. That was the first thing. Now we come to the other thing. You have to work. You simply have to put a lot of hard work into whatever you're doing. And hard work is many things. Hard work has many forms. Hard work is showing up when you have said you wanted to show up. You have to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. You're there, you're ready, you wear, I wouldn't say wear a smile, but it's almost like that. You have to be ready for the day. That also means you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to be ready for the day. Not in a crazy way, but just ready. So that is part of you being prepared and working hard. Stick to what you have said you wanted to be doing, and then there's no way around of studying. Studying the material you have to be working on. I've been sitting the whole day writing a report that I have to do. I have to finish it tomorrow, and there is no one who will do it for me. I only have to sit down in front of my computer and work very hard at what I'm doing. And there's no shortcut to anything. I really believe that, and I know you know this, but I think it's worth underlining. People often ask me, I think it's such a weird question, oh, you've been very lucky. Yeah, I have been very lucky. I have been very lucky. I have a great family of 2 children. I've done amazing things in my life. But none of this would have happened if I hadn't put in the hard work. And being prepared to put in that hard work. Because luck doesn't come. Luck follows the people who work very, very hard. That's the way it is. So there's no way around that. So that was the hard work. And then we come to the third part, which is how should we behave? How should we get things done with other people? And now we're back to the question that I was asked when I came in, what advice would you like to have had when you were young trying to go somewhere. And I think there's actually two pieces of advice. First of all, I would like someone, my mom, my sister, someone to just say to me, mate, pick your battles. Pick your battles. Because you're not going to win all your battles. And if you're going to be this brave and say yes to everything, just choose the battles you want to take. And that's actually a really good advice. It came to me rather late, so I took a lot of battles that I shouldn't have. But it's very important that you have to understand that you will meet resistance in whatever you're going to do. You will meet people who will be against you, and you should pick how much energy you want to spend in those battles. Because often, sometimes you lose, and then you also run the risk of losing face or just being generally annoyed with the situation. So just pick which ones are really, really important and which battles you should just let go of. And that leads me to the second thing. People think you can't learn anything from politicians, but you actually can. That leads me to the second thing you have to learn in this part, and that is try to understand who's in front of you. Try to understand if we have a big fight or a big row, or that we have to solve this question together. And don't forget, I led a minority government with 3 parties, so we always had to fight to be first in agreement with ourselves and then to win a majority or get a majority in parliament. And one of the most important things, if you need to find some middle ground or to have a dialogue or to reach a compromise, is actually to find out what is her motives for wanting this. How's she thinking? How does it look from her perspective? This is very important because you will be much better at finding solutions, meeting someone in the middle ground, being a leader, if you actually start trying to find out what is that other person want? What is she coming from? What would success look for her? If she came out of this negotiation room or this room, what would success look for her? This is very important. It's very hard because most people are in their own head, in their own brains, and they just care about, I want to get as much as possible, and I'm going to beat this person up, but that's not what a negotiation or a dialogue or a compromise is about. It's about understanding where the other person is coming from and understanding what is actually important to them. And this is something I would like to know a lot earlier. Maybe someone should remind me today as well, because it's actually a really hard thing to remember. So I think these are my advice. I'm almost sure that it adds up to 10 pieces of advice. I've lost count, but some of you have written it down, so you can count them for me. But I think this is the advice that I want to give you. Try to say yes to things, even though you don't know that it's all going to be fine. Be cool, be nice on the way. Believe in yourself, even though you don't come from a background where everything is given to you. Believe that you can actually be part of changing something. See who the other person are and what they're coming from, and believe that you can complement each other. You don't have to be the same to work really well together. And try on the way to have fun, be nice, and be cool. That's it.
Wow. Thank you very much for inspirational advice.
Not too long.
Yeah, about 10 minutes. No,
yeah.
it was good enough. We'll now proceed on to the Q&A with our Masterclass members. We'll be taking the question in 3 questions at a time.
Sure.
So if you can respond after the 3 questions, that would be great. Okay. So first off, we have Yusuf, Charlie, and Luke.
Thank you, Thorning-Schmidt, for your great talk. My name is Yusuf.
You can call me Helle as well. You can call me Helle.
My question is, what top 3 characteristics do you feel make a good leader?
I shouldn't answer that. I'll wait 3 questions. I've been told this. You told me. Well, you told me.
Hi, I'm Charlie. Thank you so much for coming into the event. You are pretty much my political idol, so I'm really excited. I just wanted to ask, when you're in a leadership role, is it more important to make decisions with your head or with your heart, or do you need a good balance of each? And can you give us some examples of decisions you've made either way?
Hi there, my name's Luke. Thank you so much for your time this evening. With your particular experience in leadership roles, what thing do you know now and have you learned along the way that you wish you'd known when you started?
Yeah. So I'm,
Yes,
now.
yes.
Thank you very much. I need your permission. You know, I'm not, well, first of all, the third one, I think I tried to answer that first of all, just that hard work, I think I always knew that, because I think people of my background, perhaps some of you as well, we know that nothing comes to us without working hard for it. So I knew that very, very from the very beginning. And there's also something very, very rewarding in hard work and seeing what that can get you and what results and what changes you can bring. So there is the pick your battles thing, but I also think that if you want to be a leader, how many in here want to be a leader? Okay, that's all of you really who wants to be a leader. I think, and that brings me back to the first question, what is the characteristics of a good leader? I think all leaders, all of us, should aspire to be fair. To be fair in how we see things. And that is this about being balanced. Some people think that being a leader is just saying, you do that, and you don't do that, and you do that. That is never the leadership role of today, at least. It might have been 30 years ago or something, but I don't know any leaders who can change things by working like that. And that goes for everyone I have met. Even Barack Obama could not speak to people like that. A lot of stuff would happen, but it's actually better to try to be fair and try to understand, is this possible, or how are we going to get there? So I think a leadership is about being fair as a leader. One thing I didn't understand, and still don't understand actually, but people tell me that all the time, is that you also have to accept that when you take a decision, or tell people this is where we're going, because I'll come back to that, but this is direction, this is where we're going. You can't expect people to understand it. You have to get everyone through a process of really leaning into that decision, understanding it almost with their whole body, not only with their heads, but really understanding it. And one of my big mistakes as a leader is that I don't understand process very well. I don't understand that I can take people actually sitting in a circle discussing things for a very long time and then reach a decision, and that means that it's a better decision because not only I, but also the 9 others in the room, they actually understand why we're taking this decision, where we're going. So I think process is a very important thing as well. And the third thing, which is the hard part of being a leader, is that not very, very few decisions are easy. I mean, it's very, very rare that you come into the office and you have to do this and that, and that there's either a black solution or a white solution, and it's just easy. There's always a lot of grey in decision making. And that means that 40% of you want to go in this direction, 60% want to go in this direction. And that is why it is hard to lead. Because if it was just black or white, it would be so easy every day to just come in, take the decisions. That is why, the reason why it's so hard to be a leader is because you every day have to operate in a grey zone where you don't have all the answers. There might be people outside, and because I've been in politics, you had the commentators, you had the public, you had everyone who had a lot of opinions about which way we should be going. But actually, when you're in the room and you gather as many factors as you can, still it's hard to take decisions. And in that grey area, where there's pros and cons, and it's quite difficult, and people are saying a lot of different things to you, you still have to say, we're going that way. This is the decision we're taking. And I would actually say that most of the decisions you take as a leader have no yes or no answer. It's not black and white, it's always a shade of grey. Mm-hmm. So I think this is very important, and that is when you have to lean back and take a decision and not be too afraid. And what can you be afraid of when you take a decision? What's the worst thing that can happen if you take a decision? Give me your... Yeah?
Backfires.
What?
It backfires.
Yeah, or you make a mistake. It backfires, something happens, you make a mistake, and it was just a bad decision because there might have been some unknowns that you didn't take into consideration, you didn't get the right advice, you just made the wrong call. So I think there's a huge risk in taking decisions, and actually you should not be a leader if you're not prepared to accept the risk and live with that risk. And that also means that if you're taking a decision that didn't turn out so well, you have to take it on your shoulders. That wasn't the best decision, that wasn't my best day. Maybe you even have to apologize to some people, or you have to say to people you work with, I'm not so proud of that decision we took that day. So I think this is the hardest part of being a leader, that you always operate in a grey area, and you have to take a risk, and you have to be a little bit brave to cut through and say this is a direction. And that is the answer to your question. You have to be quite comfortable with being in that grey area and taking that risk. Then you were asking, and thank you for your kind words, then you were asking, do you take decisions with your heart or with your mind? See, this is a very difficult question. What do you think? What do you think?
I think it depends on the issue.
Yeah.
There are some things.
Yeah. But I would actually say always both. Always hopefully get your heart in there, but try to use your brain as well, because that's very, very good. It's good to have a brain. And it's good to use it. A lot of people will feel that they want to do something, but as a leader you are actually supposed to use your brain a lot and not leave your heart completely. But you also have to trust that you are not the only one feeling something in this issue, because you might be feeling something different, or you might be feeling something different. So that is why we have to actually apply both our emotions, our ethics, in many ways. I think ethics is a middle between heart and brain. Ethics is a very big part of decision making. Every day, actually, your ethics, your moral is part of decision making. So you have to use your heart, your ethics, stroke moral, and your brain. And it's a mistake to think that there's nothing in between, because moral and ethics is a very big part of taking decisions. What do you actually believe in? What do you think is right? What do you think is wrong? And that's not necessarily the heart. That is actually ethics and moral that comes from an outside place, not from an inside place in yourself. And you have to respect that. There are general morals and ethics that we live by, our common humanity. There are, general morals and rules. And I think you have to respect that in your general decision making as well. It might sound quite a highbrow thing to say, but I think most of you will already have been in situations where you felt you have to feel what is actually the right thing to do here. Not because of what I feel, but because we have a shared ethics and a shared humanity that gives us certain obligations.
Brilliant, thank you. Ebru, Zoe and Nat?
Hi, thank you so much for your time. It's really greatly appreciated. My question is about being a leader and how it can quite often be an isolated role. And I wondered how you managed this and how you ensured within that you were able to remain motivated and driven.
So thank you for your talk. There are times when your closest advisors had to explain a difficult situation.
Can you speak up a little bit? I can't hear you, maybe it's just my ears. Yeah.
So my question is, there are times when your closest advisors had to explain to you a difficult situation they know that you would not like to hear. What advice would you give to these advisors to help them have these conversations and to navigate their leader through these difficult decisions? And as a leader, what do you look for in a good advisor?
Thank you very much for your time. My question is, what was an average day for you as Prime Minister, and what has the similarities been with your role as CEO of the Save the Children?
great questions. Thank you very much. I think I will stand up. It works better for me. First about the isolation. Yeah, I think that's a given when you are a leader, particularly if you're Prime Minister, that you have to take decisions. And I remember clearly when I came into the Prime Minister's office, I mean, to come into the Prime Minister's office is quite a crazy thing, because you go to the Queen, you come back, and you are like you have a government, you say goodbye to them, they go back to their offices, their new offices, and you have helpers around you all the time. They show you this is the chair, this is everything. But then at some point, you close the door, and you are on your own in that office, around saying, all right. And then you get on with it. People have often asked, so what did you do? Did you pinch yourself to say, is this real? I didn't have time to do any of that. I didn't have time to admire myself or whatever we were doing. I just had to get on with the job. But I do remember this feeling of closing the door and knowing or feeling very clearly that a lot of these decisions you would end up being alone. You would end up being behind this door, and you have to be the one that actually calls out what is the direction. I found out about myself that I was very comfortable with that. I need to talk to people about decisions, and I'd like to hear advice, but I also like to just in the end of the day just find out what direction do I believe we should be taking. And that is a very empowering feeling to actually be able to do that. Of course it's lonely, but you somehow have to accept that loneliness as part of being a leader. But I will say this, not all of you, many of you of course, are going to be Prime Ministers. But if you're not Prime Minister, if you just work in a more normal job, as CEO of Save the Children International or something, you will always have people around you to be able to take those decisions and share the responsibility. But there's also an element of you being the last person taking a decision, also about very, very important issues. So that is something that you have to not be scared of. You actually have to like it a little bit, that the buck stops here. You have to like that a little bit. Then there was a question of advisors. Who was that? That was you. Yeah. What do you do? How do you treat advisors when they come in with something you don't want to hear? That's a really good question, because that happens all the time. And you sort of imagine that they're outside the door and they're always going in there to say it to her and how we do it. I feel it's very, very important to create an environment around yourself where people feel that they are there to speak their minds. What does that mean actually? What does it mean to create that kind of environment? Well, first of all, it means that you have to keep your own brain open. And that's when we're back to what I started talking about. You have to respect and accept that people can come in a room that can be very different from yourself. They can have completely different opinions, and it's worth listening to. But you can only do that if you actually open your brain a little bit and accept that maybe they could have a point. I meet so many people, I've met so many people in my life who thought they had all the answers. And again, that might have been a leadership model that was fine 20 years ago. Our fathers might have adopted that leadership model, but it just doesn't work now. It doesn't work now because you don't have all the answers, because no one has the authority anymore that you had in the old days. In the old days, you had a lot of authority given to you, particularly if you were a guy, if you were a man, with a beard, if you were older than the people you worked with, if you had a higher position, then you had a lot of authority suddenly given to you. It doesn't work like that anymore. Now you have to fight for your authority, and you have young people coming in and saying, I think that's just crazy what you're saying, you should do it completely differently. And if you don't listen to that, not only will you lose your authority very, very quickly, you will also end up taking the wrong decisions. So I think particularly now, being a model leader, you have to keep your brain open. That means that people will say something that you disagree with. And I have also been very annoyed, stroke angry, really pissed off with people who have said something to me that I didn't like. But I didn't like myself, particularly if I didn't take the advice in the spirit that was given.
I'm trying to help you here. I'm going to try to give you the best advice I can. And that also means you have to surround yourself with great people who can say things to you. And if a lot of people, they think when they become leaders, they should surround themselves with people who know less than they do, or don't want to speak up their mind, or have fewer opinions than they do. That's completely wrong. As a leader, you should try to surround yourself with people who are better than you are, who know more about these things, who are experts, who can see the holistic picture, who can actually see things in a completely different way than you can yourself. See, that is when it gets really exciting to go to work every day. Where you get that impression from people that you work with, and you think, oh, that was really clever when he said that. That's an amazing feeling. So try not to surround yourself, if you are leaders, with people who are not as bright as you, and not as full of ideas, and not as experimental as you. I think that's very important. And I often think it's important when you sit around a table, a lot of people will agree with each other. People love to agree with each other when they go around the table. They love to say, oh, I think the same as you did, and I really that. But you have to appreciate the person who sort of sit there a little bit quiet, and in the end say, there's something I don't understand. There's something here that doesn't add up. If we're going to explain this policy to people outside, they'll ask these questions, and I don't actually understand that. When you come with these figures, I don't get it. You have to appreciate that person. It might be the quietest person in the room. It might be the one who doesn't always have all these crazy ideas and do long speeches. For that person, you have to really listen. Because there might be something there. I wish I'd done that more times than I have. Because it's not always easy to stop and step back and say, is there something that we're missing out on here, or something that we missed here, something that we should be discussing. But that is very, very important. So the short answer to your question is surround yourself with people who dare speaking up, who have the capacity to see things in a different way than you do, and who are a little bit less streamlined in their way of thinking. I think that's very, very important. And the third question was, what was that again?
We're trying to keep track every day as Prime Minister, and how that's changed.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's a good one. Well, to be a Prime Minister is a very, very difficult, difficult, yes, but also every day is different. You have the most amazing days where you get to actually work really hard on a speech, and you sit there and you're completely into that, and you sit in the office and you work with your best people, and they come in and have ideas, and you exchange and you shout and you laugh and you disagree, and it's very creative. That's an amazing day. But then you have another amazing day, or maybe later that day you have to go to Parliament to answer questions in the plenary, or go to a committee and answer questions about foreign policy questions. Or you have a leader coming to your country, could be Secretary General of the UN who comes and visits you. You have to have a meeting with him, maybe a lunch. You discuss issues, of global issues. Then there's all the leaving your country, because luckily you actually get to leave your country as well. You go to Europe. Europe is a very, very big thing, or was a very big thing, part of my life, because as a European Prime Minister, you spend many, many, many hours with other European leaders. We have the Council of Europe, European Council, where we sit for hours and hours with all the heads of states and government discussing these big issues. So that's a big part of a Prime Minister's life. And sometimes you don't actually meet them, or you do meet them, but sometimes you need to talk to them between meetings, so there's phone calls, and you talk to people and find out what you're going to do on a particular issue. So one of the part of the job description is also to have a good relation with other leaders, to be able to talk to them. Another part of my job was, of course, to get agreement within the government. And when you're a three-party coalition government, that is a very, very hard thing to do. So I would often have long, long meetings where we started in each corner of the room and had nothing to say to each other, and everyone was really annoyed, and there was a horrible mood in the room. And then you gradually get people together, and then you start working on the other parties in the parliament to get them along and get a majority for your policies. Sometimes when I think of them, I'm surprised we got anything done because it's so complex, but you do actually get things done. So being a Prime Minister is a wonderful bouquet of amazing things that you do every day, I can't think of a boring day, that's a great thing. I can think maybe days that weren't that good and where everything went wrong and we had a bad day in the press and everyone thought we were horrible and we should leave office and all those things. But I can't think of one single day that was boring as being Prime Minister, and I actually loved it. I thought it was amazing to be part of being accountable to your citizens, to your people, and serving your people. It's a very, very beautiful thing to have a role in trying to serve your people. So that was Prime Minister. How does that relate to what I'm doing now? I think the biggest difference, for some of you, those of you who don't know it, I run Save the Children. Save the Children is an umbrella organisation where we have 29 members, Save the Children members, Save the Children UK, US, Denmark, 29. And on top of that, we have, of course, a common organisation which is called Save the Children International. And that is the organisation that I run. We're a very big organisation. We have more than 20,000 people working everywhere in the world on projects for children. We work in 120 countries. We have organised ourselves in more than 50 country offices across the globe. So the big difference of what I'm doing now and before is, first of all, I'm accountable to this world's children. That's an amazing thing, that every day I have to think to myself, have I done something good for this world's children? Before I was accountable to the Danish people, now I'm accountable to this world's children. Because I feel that the world has promised these children, in what we did in the Sustainable Development Goals, we have promised them that we will try to create a world where they don't have to be poor, where they can go to school, where they don't have to die of a disease we could have prevented before they're 5. All these things, we've promised that to this world's children, and I'm part of that promise. So that is who I'm responsible, accountable to now. I'm also accountable to my board, but that's a different question. But to these children. And I think the nature of who you are accountable to, and also the fact that I work in a global environment now, I travel all over the world, I have to know what goes on in the whole world. I don't, but I try to keep informed about what's happening in the whole world. That is different from being a Prime Minister. People often ask me, are you working less now than you were Prime Minister? And I'm not, but I think that's just something wrong with my head in that context. So, but I'm not actually working less now because the world is very big. I've worked out. So I travel quite a lot. So I still have very varied days. I still have a lot of decisions to make every day. I'm not always quite sure what's going to happen in a day. It's very unpredictable. And also, what I like a lot is I like the variation of the whole thing. One day I can be in Australia talking to Aboriginal children there, or in Ethiopia looking at what drought is doing to the population there. The other day I can be here with you on my office near Piccadilly or in Chatham House where I was earlier today. So the variation of that and being able to engage with so many people, that's an enormous asset for me that I enjoy every day of my life, that I get to talk to so many different people and get all these impressions in my head every day.
Thank you. Up next we have Rufan, Zara and Nadia.
Thank you for your time, Rufan. My question is to you that during your time as Prime Minister and now as CEO, how do you ensure that you are connected with the people you lead and represent?
Thank you for coming this evening. My name is Zara, and my question is, what were the major influences and stakeholders that would impact your leadership decisions, and how would you advise us to be able to influence our future leaders?
Thank you for attending this session this evening and taking the time out to join us. My name is Nadia. My question is, what challenges do you feel young women still face? What challenges do you feel young women still face when applying to leadership positions and helping their own country?
Great questions. Well, on the first one, I just had to find which one. Number 10, yeah. Yes, influence and stakeholder, what will impact your leadership? See, this is a very good question because leader, when you're anything really, I really advise strongly, it's a more technical advice, I advise strongly that you map your stakeholders. You have to really find out who are your stakeholders. I mean, who has actually got a stake in your leadership or what you're trying to achieve. And it's a very fun thing to do, and I would actually recommend everyone to do it. Who's your stakeholders in your general life? Who's your stakeholders here? Who's actually influencing what you're doing? And I would also advise to divide those stakeholders up to in little groups, because stakeholders are not just stakeholders, they're different kind of stakeholders. You have people who are stakeholders who will always be behind your decisions, like your mom. People who are always behind your decisions, who think whatever she does is really clever, is really good, you're right there. That's quite an interesting group of stakeholders. Then you'll have the stakeholders who are the stakeholders, but who really do not dig who you are. They don't like you very much, and they don't like the project you're doing. They're different kind of stakeholders. Then you have a different kind of stakeholders who they're not really convinced. They're not convinced that you should be the leader. They're not convinced about the decisions you have taken. They're not convinced about the way you work. But they're not really against you either. So, of all these three groups, who would you work on first? Yes?
The ones who aren't against you, but aren't.
Exactly. Because those are the most important. So what you should be doing is you should do your stakeholder mapping. You should find out what are they thinking. How will they help your project? How will they help you succeed? And I don't mean to personally succeed, look at me kind of succeed, but actually do what you are supposed to be doing in your everyday life. How can people help you succeed? And then find the people who can actually be convinced, but where it takes some work to convince those people. What kind of work could that be? Well, that could be phoning them or calling them into a meeting, asking their opinion, finding out who they are, finding what they are interested in, finding out what they think of you. So I would really advise to be quite systematic about people who can influence your success all the way through. It is very fun exercise. It's a very fun exercise to go through and find out who of all these people can I actually influence. I would advise also to try to influence the people who like you in the beginning and like what you're doing, because you can't forget those or take them for granted. But it's a very interesting exercise to do this. And we have different stakeholders, and I really think it's important to, and that's what I've learned as well, you can't just take decisions and say, I'm going over here. And then once you are all over there, you have got to look behind you and you have no one with you. Because your decisions will not stay, they will not be as influential as they could be. We are much stronger together. And that means that if you can get a big group of people with you in your decisions, if you can actually have a conversation to the extent that you think you've taken a decision, not me, then it's even better. And if you can share that decision-making power with someone else, and just, it's much better if you all think that you've taken this decision, we're going out that door, not that door. It's best if you all think you've been part of taking that decision. And it's not about cheating anyone, it's about actually listening and also being a little bit clever when you take a decision. So try to get people with you, and you can only do that if you properly listen to your stakeholders and take their advice. And sometimes when it's not worth having a battle, just accept that you were not getting it. I mean, it doesn't matter so much whether we go out of that door or that door when we leave. So if it doesn't matter that much, let's just decide that we're going out of that door, because that's what you want so much. So I think that's so important that you think about your stakeholders, you have a respect for them, and also respect that this is not something that just comes, it's something that you have to work with very systematically. And you word for the next one?
Yes. How do you ensure you're connected with the people you really represent, both as Prime Minister and as CEO?
Yeah, I think that is actually so important. It's more important when you're Prime Minister, because hopefully now I think I've been elected, or I've been selected to do this job. I hope that I'm living up to what I have to do. I am passionate about children's rights. So I think that's okay. I'll come back to what you can do more. But as a politician, I think this is so important. And no politician can say that they have always been perfect at that, because sometimes we fail. And we are not good enough at listening to the people we represent. And that is why democracy is such an amazing thing, because you actually have to listen to the people you represent. What does listening mean in politics? Some people think that listening in politics is just that because the majority says one thing, that is what we do. But that is not listening. Because listening properly as a politician is supposed to look at half of that, 2/3 of this room who wants to do one thing, but also the other third should have a say in our decision making. Democracy is not just about the majority deciding everything. Democracy is that you actually try to listen the whole way around, be part of creating bridges between the 2/3 here and the 1/3 here, and try to find compromises. To some reason, for some people, compromises is like a lukewarm form of creating decisions. It's like they don't like compromises. But maybe compromises is a good thing, because it actually means that we have tried to hear everyone, and everyone have had a say in our decisions. And true democracy is actually that. We have a very interesting case right now here in the UK where 48% voted to remain in the European Union. But now we have discussion about Brexit, and is it a hard Brexit, what kind of Brexit? What I'm lacking in this conversation is that we also listen to the 48% that felt something different. 48% is not 10% we're talking about, it's almost half of the population that wanted something different. And they have a right to be heard. Because otherwise it's just a majority democracy. To me, that is not the only part of democracy. It's a very good principle. If we have to decide something, that we vote. But democracy is also having a conversation, having a process, trying to agree, and trying to represent people without just being someone that walks into Parliament and vote exactly like you've been told back home. This is a very interesting discussion, because politicians are often accused of not listening. Sometimes they're not. But sometimes the listening is actually also that they try to listen to a very broad part of the population and then bring that into some kind of decision making. And that is the hardest part. And if it was just representing the majority, then you might as well have complete direct democracy where everyone can vote about everything. But we have decided we want representatives. And those representatives are actually there to try to listen to a number of people and try to come up with good solutions for all of us. So I think that is very important. Right now we have a new conversation, and I'm seeing a lot, and I don't want to be too political, but I think it's important as well in the political life and the political discussion we have right now. I'm seeing a lot of othering in our political life, where you talk about the others and where you have no understanding for who the others are. And you could probably get loads of examples, but I see a big othering between people from the city and in towns. They don't understand each other, they're up against each other. Then there's the graduates against non-graduates, up against them, they don't like each other. Then there, of course, are the rich and the poor. We've always had that. Perhaps there's also some racial contradiction we have to have. There's definitely religious othering that we're seeing right now. This is a strong tendency of our time. That we're talking about the others, thinking we can define them, they're like that. The people who voted for Trump and Madame Le Pen and others, well, they are xenophobes, they are deplorables, they are stupid, perhaps. That is us othering them. A lot of people who voted for Trump, they'll look at other people and say, these extreme globalists, as was the expression that was used in the French election campaign, extreme globalists. They are only in it for themselves, they don't only care about themselves, they don't care about anyone else. And then of course there are the capitalists. They're definitely in it for themselves, they only care about the money.
So we have a strong tendency to put these very strong words on other people. And what does that mean to all of us? Well, it means we cannot have a conversation. Because if you are just like that, and if you're just like that, why would we even bother having a conversation? So you are the new generation of politicians and business people and people who want to influence this, the community that you're in, your country. And I strongly hope that this othering that we have right now, where we're not talking to each other, but talking about each other, and you're like this, and thinking we know everything about the others, it needs to stop. It needs to stop, and it can only stop if we have a real conversation with each other. A real conversation where we don't call each other names. So this is very important to me, and I think that is also part of the new conversation and the listening conversation that we have to have. And I got a question which I've got many, many times. I haven't found a good answer to it yet. Is what does it mean to be woman in politics and in business? And I'm so happy to see there are loads of women here. It will come as no surprise to you that I really believe that women should be empowered. I feel women have a lot to give. And I feel that it is very important that we have an equal representation of men and women in all parts of life. Why is that? Why is it important to have both women and men in all parts of political life, business life? Why is it important? Yeah? Yeah, I don't think that's a bad answer actually, because I think we have to recognize that men and women still live very different lives. We still live very different lives, and to me it is very important that all aspects of life are represented in, for example, the political life. It's also just a simple fairness. But the reason why it's fair is because we recognize that there is still a difference, and we also want to make sure that that difference is represented in all parts of our life. So I'm a very strong feminist and have always been a feminist, and I think we should talk about being feminist as well. And is it harder then to be a woman in politics or in business or whatever? And I would say yes, it is. It is harder because you do get judged on a broader spectrum, and if you get judged on a broader spectrum, it is easier to fail. And I think the descriptions of me, for example, in public life has been very gendered all the way through. And I also look at other women who have been prime ministers or maybe very far in business, and I do think there's no doubt that there is a difference between how women and men are being described, also what you expect from a woman and what you expect from men, and I think that actually means that there's a bias towards women still. Sorry to say it to girls, but I think that is the case. It doesn't mean you can't penetrate it, but you have to be aware that this is still there. We will have to do a lot to combat this, and I will try to do what I can to go up against it, but I think the first step in that is recognizing that there is a difference between men and women when they want to go to higher posts wherever it is. And for lots of women, what is holding them back is also their private life, because a lot of women, they want to have children. I have children myself, and that's an amazing thing. You should have children if you want to, but you should also think that your husband can probably take some of the responsibility. He's probably very, very good at it. But also that you can actually work, have a career, and still raise amazing children to try to be successful. People say, oh, women want it all. Yes. And that's fine. So I think what a lot of women do is to say, now we have children, now I want to be a very good mother, and I'm going to disengage a little bit from the life outside the house, and that is what starts a negative circle for a lot of women, because it's hard to return to the labor market. And I can understand why you do it. So there's a lot of personal choices that women make, but there's also a bias, and of course those two things are also linked. So that is my depressing answer to you. I wish it was different, but it's not. Any comments on that? Because this is very controversial. Did you want to have a comment? Yeah.
be very interested just to hear you how it was, because you mentioned that when you sort of put yourself forward to be elected, you were pregnant whilst also having the other child. So just how was that all?
It was crazy. It was a crazy thing to do. Well, I don't know. I mean, you just get through it. And it was again one of those things where you think, God, you actually don't think so much about it. And that's what youth give you as well. And that's why I started out saying to you, you don't have to plan it all. You can't see the consequences of all. People, as I said to you before, have always asked, have you had a career plan? No, not really. And I think sometimes you just end up in situations where you have a 2-year-old at home and you're pregnant yourself and you're running to be a member of the European Parliament. You think, how do I end up here? And you're very tired and it's not very good and you don't fit any of your clothes. And you end up saying, how did I end up being here? But then, first of all, it's quite funny. Sometimes you find yourself in situations, and I think children give you that is actually quite funny that you end up in that situation, so you have to laugh at yourself. And also you find a strength to just get through it and be in what you have decided to be in. And I want to underline as well that it's not because I'm particularly strong or particularly anything. So what is most important for all of us, men and women, but perhaps a little bit more to the women, is that you don't have to do it all and you don't have to be perfect. You do not have to be perfect. You don't have to be the perfect mum every day. You don't have to cook a perfect meal. You don't have to be perfect in your work. Sometimes you can just be a little bit so-so. You have to have a general respect for what you're doing and try to do the best in each situation. I think I've been an okay mum, actually quite good most days. But you don't have to be perfect. And I think a lot of women struggle with perfection, but you just get rid of it straight away. If you're doing a lot, for example, it might be a bit messy at home than you would have liked, or the cooking is not as amazing as you would have liked. And I think that not to try to be perfect is actually a very, very good advice, particularly to women, because they get so stressed out about that. So I think if you sometimes you piece things together and said, was it an ideal situation to have a small baby and be pregnant and do all these things at the same time? Not really. It would have been better to face it a little bit. But sometimes, I mean, a European election campaign comes every 5 years. That was the time. So that is what you're going to do. And you just say yes and try to do it and not try to be perfect.
Thank you, Helle. We have one last question for you from Mohammed.
Thank you for your highly inspirational words this evening. And my question to you is, which leader, dead or alive, inspires you the most?
I get inspired by a lot of people. I get inspired by a lot of people that I meet. People have asked me that many times before. Are there any leaders that inspire you? And I can say the same thing as everyone else can say. I've been extremely inspired by someone like Nelson Mandela, and I am inspired by what Angela Merkel has done for Europe. I work very, very closely with Merkel, and I still think she's one of the really great leaders in Europe. I'm inspired by the European leaders who came together in the beginning of the 1950s, to join hands and say we will have no more war in Europe. We will have no more war. Now we have been through this too many times. We're killing each other. Now we're going to hold hands and we're going to do things differently. I think that's one of the most inspiring things that has happened, that a region that has just been fighting with itself for hundreds and hundreds of years come together and say, we will do it differently. And that is my passion for the European Union. That is about that you actually could see this is not working. We are going to change this with political power. I think that's so powerful. And maybe that was what got me into politics, that I really could see that politics can change things for ordinary people who can live more peacefully and better now than they ever have been living in Europe, for example. So I think that is very powerful and very inspirational. But I must admit, I get almost more inspired by people that I just meet. And particularly in what I'm doing now, I meet a lot of children. And they're just the coolest people. They're just so great to hang out with, because
Children, they know how to play. They know how to be robust in very difficult situations. And I met children in refugee camps. I met children in the worst slum that I've ever seen in Freetown in Sierra Leone. Not long ago, I went to China and met some of the poorest children in China and saw how they lived and what they experienced. And every time I meet these children, I meet this amazing hope. I think it's amazing that you can go out of war and you are traumatized and you can come out on the other side and then you come out with a little bit of innocence still left in your face. You know, when you see children and they still have those eyes where they still look a little bit innocent. And sometimes I think the whole world should be run by 11-year-olds because they're kinder. They will actually listen to what you're saying. You say something and they will expect that you're listening to them. I think children should give us that hope, and I get every day almost, and particularly when I'm traveling, I get so inspired by these children. That they have gone through so much hardship. You come into, for example, this school that we're running in Freetown, Sierra Leone. I mean, you've never seen anything like that, the slum there. It's just hideous. And I come into this little school that we are running, and we have these two little girls, I think they're 10 years old, and I ask them, of course, so what are you going to do when you grow up? And they're going to be doctors and engineers, and they have so much power. They look you straight in the eyes and they're going to do all these things. And I just came away from there thinking, is there any way that we can honor that light in their eyes, honor that hope? Or will it happen to them like happens so many other times, that we just cut that hope out of their heads? So I think what inspires me most are people who have done something extraordinary, who's come out on the other side of a situation, been refugees, been through abuse, married off when they were 14 and still found a way of connecting with the world. Those people, I think, should inspire us. Because those should give us hope that there is always a way out. And I want you to leave you with that we should let ourselves be inspired by the people we meet, by their stories, by what they are telling us, and also by their hope in their eyes. I see so much division in this world. Every day we hear about division, people who are speaking to each other the way they shouldn't be speaking. Is our job, and particularly your job, because you're young, to build bridges, believe in hope, and believe that we can actually change the world if we do it together. And that's the last thing I want to leave you with, that often when I speak to universities or people like you, I think it's very, very important to remind ourselves that you are privileged. Sit here today, you have your notebooks, you take notes, you're very bright, obviously, you're privileged to be here. And with that privilege also comes some deep responsibility. You never forget that what you have been given, never forget what other people might need. Don't forget the people who didn't get to sit here, who have not been invited into a learning environment from they were very little, who are left behind. And I think with the privilege of being here, of being able to discuss all these things that we've been discussing today, also comes enormous responsibility. So don't forget that. Thank you.